Hi, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of May 17, 2021. In terms of the stock market direction, and by that I mean primarily Dow Jones and Nasdaq, I predict that this week is going to be a down week overall, and especially towards the end of the week, we may see some larger drops. In terms of the focus of this week, I guess the overall focus would be on areas like communication, transportation, social media, and retail sales. That's where we will see the most news and the most, I guess, important announcements. So to be specific, Monday, as I mentioned, I think is going to be a down day. It does look a little bit worse for the US and globally. And pre-open in the early morning, I expect that there might be increased news, as I said, about retail sales, various sorts of agreements, negotiations, and transportation and communication companies, including social media, and the focus maybe on their earnings or expenses or funding of some new projects or investments. Perhaps some new project is announced or funding of the project is announced, or perhaps there's even an announcement of a new leader to head such a project, and any sort of leaders that we may hear about probably will be either females or somebody who is not seen as, I guess, as macho or as maybe typically masculine. Let's see, there may also be announcements about things like I said, new projects, but also new services or new, say, cars, or I don't know, new phones or any sort of devices that are used again for communication and transportation. And devices that are announced or first introduced on Monday will likely be perceived favorably by the public. Maybe they will be seen as more luxurious or beautiful, and they will likely be more popular than usual. So perhaps if there are new destinations, travel destinations are introduced, they may be more popular than before. Or if, like I said, there's a new phone or something along those lines is introduced, or a new social network, or some new, like I said, destinations or ways of traveling now become available, like a new cruise line or something like that, those may be seen as kind of more luxurious, more comfortable, more beautiful than usual, and will attract more people than usual as well. And if, say, there's like a new app or a new, like I said, social media platform that comes up, or a new service that such platform introduces, and especially if it's related to, again, beauty, luxury, romance, those things may be more popular than usual. And lastly, on Monday, there may be increased news about education. So perhaps teachers, students, young people, and again, the focus may be on communication and transportation. So perhaps increased funding, for, say, to increase teacher salary, or increased funding to ensure that students can get to, schools on properly, safely, fast, etc. And also perhaps introduction of new social media platform that again is focused on teaching somehow. And at the same time, there may be announcements of increased prices in those areas. So perhaps school books may go up, or cost of education may go up. And those are the kind of announcements I would expect on Monday, the 17th of May. For the US, the period of May 13th through 20th, and especially the 15th through the 17th of may see increased focus on leadership, meaning prominent individuals such as actors, politicians, people who are well educated, just somebody who is kind of regarded in the society, or is, popular, social media personality, as well as on the US leadership in the world, sort of on a country level. And there may be some tensions where important or famous people may experience kind of negativity towards them, being either an attack, not necessarily physically, but kind of verbally, or experiencing strong criticism. And there may be some, if there is, say, an appointment of a new leader, there may be some pushback because it may be seen that it's kind of a change and rocking the boat in terms of the leadership, may be undermining the stability of either, the company where that leadership change is announced, or even on the country level, and undermining the stability or sort of potential for earnings. So there's some, I wouldn't say crisis, but some tensions or some attacks on leaders, again, because it's perceived that they're either the old leaders or even the leaders that are just newly appointed are somehow basically not doing their job well, to the point where they may be undermining stability of, like I said, earnings, or the perception of, say, status of the company by other competitors or by the clients. And this may be more related to the either governmental leaders or leaders of large corporations, but could also be, as I said, famous people, like a famous athlete or something like that, or entertainer. And similarly, for the same time period, 13th through the 20th in the US, there may be news about important locations. So this could be like a building, for example, or I don't know, I guess I'm thinking specifically maybe more like a building, or maybe a large construction. So if it's some sort of engineering structure, something that's either large, fairly old, maybe again like a bank or bridge, or I don't want to say stadium, but something along the lines of like a massive scale structure that's primarily made out of like rock, stone, metal, and that structure may be subject again to tensions this week, where there may be some cracks in it, or there may be a fire, or some accident may happen, or things just start crumbling because again they're outdated, and just wear and tear starts making things basically crumple, or they may be intentionally basically destroyed again, because it's just time to rebuild something, and this old structure that has been in place for a long time may be demolished again on purpose. But if it's not demolished on purpose, structures that are, like I said, old and have experienced a lot of wear and tear, unfortunately, through like the 20th of May, there's an increased probability of such buildings experiencing some problems. And again, this could be either related to maybe some finance, meaning like a bank or some place where I guess transactions occur that are of financial nature, and or a building may be related to some negotiations, a place that's perhaps where a lot of prominent individuals gather for some negotiations or agreements, or where some deals are signed, something along those lines. Let's see, for China, 13th through 18th of May, and also the same days as for the US, so the 15th through the 17th of May, we'll also see some important transits, and those may manifest as increased focus on things like taxes, insurance, rates, currencies, and also banks, savings, and earnings. And in those areas, there may be some concerns about the financial policy. So if there are changes in financial policies, or some changes or some regulations concerning, say, rates, those activities may be occurring really fast, and they be a little bit more risky and aggressive than usual, and therefore they may be seen by a larger public as perhaps maybe too risky, or proceeding too fast. But those activities, if they occur, they will likely be in an effort to balance something, balance again the inflow of money, or balance the rates or something like that. And unfortunately, again, those may be proceeding a little bit too fast, or perhaps going in the way that may seen as being too risky. And also for the same time period for China, there's increased probability of some incidents or some problems related to oil, gas, navy, pharmaceuticals, and there may be increased news about, say, bad weather, or some accidents, conflicts, attacks, or some losses. Again, could be, say, due to bad weather, or could be due to some accidents or shady deals, again related to oil, gas, navy, pharmaceuticals, all of those Neptunian domains. For Tuesday, as I said, market will go down. Then Wednesday, again, market down. And on Wednesday, there may be additional focus on kind of more conservative investments, or long-term investments that are a little bit more stable. So kind of less likely, or rather reduced focus on things like getting rich quick, or kind of increase, I guess, desire, most likely for stable long-term investments and reduced appetite for risk among the investors, and kind of focus on slow growth, careful investments, and again, this I think may bring market down. At the same time, there may be announcements about new long-term projects that again may involve communication, transportation, retail sales, social media, and I guess media just in general. And for those areas, there may be news about, say, increased regulation by government, and or I guess just even self-regulation, just imposing kind of new rules, and that obviously may slow things down just because now additional criteria need to be taken into consideration, or there may be some concerns about kind of slow growth in those areas, and again, not necessarily reduced growth, but just growth that occurs slowly, again because of some kind of cautious long-term approach being favored over quick growth. At the same time, there may also be increased news as about long-term investments in those areas, or perhaps government announces that there is some contract being awarded to like an airline company to produce some airplanes or build an airport or build a highway or something that improves specifically this communication and transportation infrastructure, or that government somehow clarifies the guidelines along which these projects may proceed. So perhaps some guidelines for car manufacturers or for online social media platforms, or platforms that say take money or something like that, or some online money exchanges. May 19th through 21st, and especially 20th and the 21st, look to me like fairly difficult days, as in increased news about stressful either weather, where there may be excessive precipitation that may impact transportation and cause some transportation and shipment delays. And there may also be increased wave of some kind of concerning news regarding oil, gas, and transportation of oil and gas, or transportation due to issues with oil and gas. I think that the prices and or sales of the related products and commodities may go down, and there may also be problems if, say, there are negotiations either about sales or some agreements or some deals related to oil, gas, also pharmaceuticals, chemicals, religion, drugs, movies, beverages. Again, these are all related to the domain of Neptune, so any sort of liquids, and again, especially oil, gas, chemicals, and pharmaceuticals. So if there are any ongoing negotiations or contracts being discussed, those may, at this point, not proceed very smoothly, and that's probably likely due to the fact that there may not be sufficient detail. So maybe one side does not provide specific numbers, or reports don't contain information that's necessary, like some details are hidden, or maybe not necessarily intentionally, but just omitted, or are not clear, and more information, like precise information, is needed in order for the negotiation to proceed. Or like I said, there might be a problem, say, with weather, or some shipment is delayed, and therefore there's a problem with delivering some pharmaceutical, delivering a chemical, or problems with transportation via waterways. Let's see, for China, the period of 19th through the 21st seems an important time, where there may be an important announcement regarding some new vision or some new goals related to banks, currency, and earnings. And the associated activities, as I mentioned, again, may be unfolding really fast, or it could be seen as an aggressive move where public opinion may be divided about this response, or maybe it could be concerning about maybe some, again, adjustments, regulation of the currency, regulation of the rates, and half of the public really supports it and half is really against it. So it can be seen as somewhat of a divisive move. And as I mentioned, the 20th and 21st in particular may be difficult times, and that's in particular where I think we have the strongest probability of market going down. In fact, there might be greater than usual drops on Thursday and Friday. And then on Friday in particular, there may be concerns about not just generally, like I said, oil, gas, and their prices, but also concerns about guidance related, guidance from like leadership, guidance from government regarding, again, oil, gas, and their transportation, but also things like immigration, international relations, and long distance travel and transportation. And the concerns may be not necessarily very serious, but rather that if there's guidance that comes out, it's either not very clear or not very sort of in-depth, or doesn't address the scope of the issue. So perhaps the guidance is given on some routes, but other locations are omitted, and it's not clear what to do with those, other locations. Should something be delivered there, or what about, can people, move from this location to the other location? And so 3 out of, 4 locations are covered by this guidance, but 4th is not. So things along those lines. Or perhaps CEO of some transportation company makes, again, some statement, and it covers some of the partners with which maybe that company cooperates, but not some other partners. And so there's some just kind of insufficient information regarding sort of the full scope of the issue. So for gold and silver specifically, I think that through the about mid-December this year, we will see an increase in those two particular, I guess, commodities, metals. And I think there may be some increased news around August 9th, and that could be potentially a top, like a intermediate top, but I think the main top for those for gold and silver for this year is going to be around December 15th. And for oil, this whole year we will experience increased news, and it will actually continue through around May of next year, because we just had Jupiter entering Pisces, which this will bring increased focus on things like oil, gas prices, and overall through, like I said, May of next year, they will most likely go up. Now, there will be a period of time where Jupiter will also retrograde back into Aquarius temporarily. That will be from around July 28th through December 28th. But like I said, between now and sometime next May, I think prices of oil and gas will overall rise. And to kind of give you a really long-term preview, I think overall we're in the trajectory where oil and gas prices will be rising through about 2025. At the very minimum, 2025 is when I think will be a really major reversal in oil and gas prices sort of on a long term. So now let's discuss the glance ahead for the upcoming next few weeks to few months. So the end of May, unfortunately, May 26th to 27th, and then early June do not look very, cheerful to me. Specifically 26th to 27th, and then June 3rd and 4th may see significant market drops and increased concerns about things like oil, gas, and other Neptunian domains, meaning Navy shipments that occur over waterways, as well as either prices or sales of or shipments of chemicals, pharmaceuticals, as well as any negotiations that involve, say, contracts dealing with music, beverages, movies, and things of that nature. And those conflicts or some problems may start around the 26th and 27th of May, and maybe temporarily there may be some tentative agreement reached on the 28th of May. However, by the 30th of May, we will have Mercury turning retrograde while squaring Neptune. So any sort of problems that perhaps have started at the end of May, where maybe parties were not communicating very clearly, or some details were missing, or some data weren't provided, unfortunately, by the 30th of May, things may get kind of even worse, where that confusion may, or lack of clear info may necessitate sort of negotiations or sales being put on hold. And by early June, we will have Mars opposing Pluto And unfortunately, at that time, any sort of negotiations may actually then escalate to the point of kind of either aggressive threats or just kind of not seeing eye to eye. And separately, kind of globally, that's a time where there's an increased probability of accidents, attacks, earthquakes, and events that may result in some sort of disaster, like a mining disaster or underground storage collapsing, or just increased like military skirmishes or angry protests, especially against government and or against police. And then globally, June 1st through 6th, and especially 4th and 5th of June, will yet again be a time where there may be difficult situations arising, both dangerous situations, like I said, related to just kind of groups of people kind of feeling more violent than usual, or there may be just natural disasters such as earthquakes, accidents, bad weather, maybe some problems with transportation, especially of things like oil, gas, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, and things of that nature. And then looking further towards the end of June through early July, we will have maybe one of the more difficult periods this whole year, where yet again there may be increased probability of military tensions, problems with the stock market, some really kind of increased volatility where some asset rises really fast and drops really fast, and a lot of ups and downs. And at the same time, there's an increased probability of fires, explosions, earthquakes, and protests, or even attacks. In terms of the general transits that are going to be in effect the entire week, we have a few strong background transits that are worth mentioning. One is, of course, the ongoing square between Uranus and Saturn that is going to be with us through about November of next year. And during certain time periods when that particular square is triggered by faster moving planets, especially Mars, we will experience increased stressful news or eventful sort of situations that are reflective of these planets. So for example, on the negative side, it could involve increased sort of anti-governmental protests or clashes between groups that have different ideologies, or difficult situations in the world that maybe are weather related, or earthquakes, or just some accidents and disasters. And in the upcoming sort of future, the worst, I guess, time period for this year will be at the end of June through early July, when Mars is going to form a T-square with Saturn and Uranus. On the sort of positive potential manifestation of this square is that old, outdated methods of perhaps doing things that are related to maybe electric devices of any sort, of electrical gadgets, electricity, power generation, or space exploration, anything that's old and outlived, being it a specific device, tool, service, makes me think of like the International Space Station. Things like that may indeed be decommissioned or not function as they're supposed to, but at the same time, Uranus, that's Saturn, obviously, old stuff kind of going away, but then Uranus may bring this fresh, new kind of momentum with new innovations and new ideas and new technologies. And Saturn may help actually implement them to make sure that they are physically produced and are implemented. And unfortunately, because of the square being a tense transit, a trans aspect between these two planets, this innovation and implementation is not likely going to be is unlikely to be proceeding smoothly. So rather than coming up with a new idea and then things being implemented, things may go along the ways of, first you have this old outlived device or transportation route or maybe service or electrical plant or something like that that first breaks down, or there are concerns about things that are so old that they may no longer function properly. And first, those things can either indeed break down and or be decommissioned, quickly because again of some stressful situation, and then things may be replaced with something new and progressive and advanced. So unfortunately, this cycle at this time of this innovation, and again, space exploration, airplanes, electrical, anything, these things unfortunately maybe, or I guess fortunately, things may be replaced with something new and innovative, but through this period of destruction or period of problems initially. So among other noteworthy transits that we are experiencing right now, and that will be here with us as background influence for the next few weeks to few months, is one that will last through the end of this month, which will be increased focus on things like communication, transportation, retail sales, negotiations of various kinds, kind of more news reports coming out, people perhaps traveling more and communicating and socializing more than usual, even shopping more than usual. And that will be through about the end of May. However, then from about May 30th through June 22nd, when we will have Mercury turning retrograde, this kind of a increase in activities or faster pace of developments that we may experience in May may slow down, where there may be maybe some changes in either regulations of some sort, or perhaps bad weather or problems again related to communication and transportation, where if there's an ongoing negotiation in May, things may be postponed until the end of June. Or if somebody made plans to travel, again, things somehow may be delayed, or there may be things kind of not flowing as smoothly until the end of June. And so then from about June, I would say 23rd is when we may experience again this pickup and the same sort of energy in terms of, again, increased travel, increased retail sales, increased negotiations, increased just movement of people, increased news. Those things may pick up yet again at the end of June, especially 23rd, and similarly around the same time, 23rd and 24th of June, is when we may hear about some changes in either financial policies or rates, taxes, or some news related to real estate, and perhaps those things are related, that maybe they will just coincide at the same time. But basically there will be some change in terms of, again, communication, transportation, moving about, and buying, shopping, etc., or negotiating deals, where the first 3 weeks of June are going to be experiencing either slowdown, or negotiations won't be proceeding as fast, or people may have to cancel their travel plans, things of that nature. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have currently Jupiter in Pisces, which will be in the background affecting things through the end of July, approximately July 27th. Then it will retrograde back into Aquarius until the 29th of December, and it will stay again in Pisces through May 10th. So, but basically, even though it will retrograde into Aquarius, it will still be, I guess, close enough to the first degree of Pisces that general influence that it will bring through, I'd say, early May of next year is, again, increased focus on all the Neptunian subjects. So again, oil, gas, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, sort of pandemics, but also precipitation. And unfortunately, what it may bring with it is increase, so an abundance of all of these sort of issues, but also expansion. So the desirable expansion will be increased in availability. So for example, more maybe vaccinations or vaccines or medications that are truly needed may become available, and or maybe there's some improved conditions for, say, swimming or for Navy. At the same time, too much, obviously, of a good thing is not necessarily a good thing. So we may also experience sort of more major floods than usual, especially the period of early April of 2022 is one such period. But generally speaking, there may be increased news about floods, rainy weather, perhaps some increase in oil prices, and or increase in just kind of maybe too many sort of floating oil storages, and they may or may not be able to find a place to basically dock, or just kind of unfortunately, maybe oil spills or gas leaks or spills of some chemicals, because again, most likely, say there's a flood or too much rain and some dam or some storage of, say, wastewater overflows. So all of those are background possibilities at this time. In terms of oil and gas prices, as I mentioned, I think, and of course prices also of other related things like maybe some beverages, some pharmaceuticals, those will all more likely to go up at this time. For the US, period of April of 2021 through March of 2022 is a significant time period where there too may be increased focus on issues related to oil, gas, and chemicals, as well as water, navy, and water pollution. And that is actually a fairly significant time period for the US, where the changes in those industries, again, related to, say, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, or water pollution, or water cleanup, navy, as well as oil and gas industries, will experience, most likely, at least according to astrology, some really significant changes that will be with the country for decades to come. And it may be something along the lines of new projects being built, or some things just completely sort of restructured from the engineering perspective, some logistics, changing and how things are being delivered, perhaps, new, ways of how, and I guess we're experiencing that, how, say, vaccines are developed and how quickly something can be delivered to the public, or obviously changes in the oil and gas industries as far as like what are the priorities, but also, again, literally like some engineering projects that are changing and how the industry functions. And other projects could be involving water or underwater locations. So I guess it makes me think of things like submarines, underwater cables, or perhaps, maybe cleaning up, hopefully, of some water, bodies of water, to make sure there's no pollution, or if there is a spill, to kind of coming up with completely new or much more efficient sort of way of dealing with that, to clean up things. And unfortunately, at this time, again, before things can get better, things may experience some problems. So perhaps, and we've seen that with like this pipeline recently that was experiencing some ransomware attack. And unfortunately, situations like that where there is this unseen problem, again, leak that's not seen and not caught in time, or this spying, hacking kind of attack that either is not caught on time, or it's not clear where it's coming from, or some spill of some chemical, or perhaps some, accounting not quite, books, not quite adding up, where there's some error, but it's not clear where exactly, the problem lies, or even other kind of businesses, not necessarily oil-related businesses, but maybe, say, a pharmaceutical company, or some, any companies, even a movie theater, for example, that, again, all of those businesses that are related to Neptunian domain may experience similar problems, where things basically, there's this unseen sort of, I wouldn't say enemy, but an unseen problem that's hard to detect and therefore hard to kind of prevent, because it's like a leak or an error because of some confusion, and it's hard to kind of address it quickly, and some sort of restructuring on a higher level may be required. So perhaps movie companies, maybe how should they operate moving forward so that they can resume, I guess, their revenues, and there may be some major change in basically logistics of how they operate in order for them to kind of proceed forward in some new revamped manner. And again, this could be related to movie industry, any sort of audiovisual equipment, beverages, even water, like sales of water, usage of water for, say, pools, swimming, things like that, fishing, of course. And at the same time, sort of for US, again, generally speaking, this just can be a time period where there may be concerns about things like banks' assets, loans, mortgages, rates, real estate, and savings, basically stability, I guess, financial stability in the country, and also stability and, I guess, safety of like food supplies, sort of the real estate prices, and also security of the borders, and basically this kind of a basic need to feel safe and protected. There may be some confusion about what basically is the source of the stability, and are things stable or not. And again, that's because of this difficult transit of Neptune that US will be experiencing to its Neptune. And of course, Neptune with it brings us just sense of confusion and concerns about things, again, not being clear. Some things might not necessarily be bad, but rather the fact that things are not clear and not transparent may bring with it a sense of basically this anxiety, I suppose, and anxiety about things being stable, about which direction things are going. And of course, there may also be just actual problems related to Neptune, meaning again floods, pollution. Say there's a flood, it can flood farmlands, with which it can maybe pollute the soil. If there's a really serious flood, for example, which of course can affect concerns about real estate that's impacted by floods, and concerns about safety of maybe insurance companies, etc. Not safety, but stability of insurance company, because again of some massive flood issues. And all of those issues will be significant for the US through about March of next year. Unfortunately, globally, April, as I said, of next year and into early May next year will still have significant probability of like major floods. So even though for US maybe it won't occur in the US, but those two things overlapping is definitely kind of makes things a little bit more difficult, I would say, again, specifically for the US. And that about will wrap it up for me for this time. I hope you are enjoying these weekly videos, and will come back and check me out next week. Until then, have a great week. Bye everyone.